Thank you and the whole team for doing such a great job and getting us off to a great start with our annual, and I should say our 11th annual gathering and our ninth gratitude reception. Now, for many of you, you're wondering, what is a gratitude reception and what makes this a reception? Well, it's not much of a reception, but it's a great way to launch GLR Week. We started this gratitude reception tradition because we want to make sure that gratitude is part of our brand. But the real reason is because we wanted our primary constituency, those stakeholder coalitions in 350 communities across the nation who are working really hard to make cooperation and collaboration successful. We wanted them to know that we understand that no one organization succeeds alone. And we wanted to remind ourselves that even on our best days, the credit for whatever we have accomplished, whatever success we celebrate, that credit must be shared with the 5,200 organizations in the local coalitions and the 100 plus field and sector leading organizations, associations, and affiliate networks who identify as allies, as partners, and as champions of the campaign for grade level reading. And to them, we are truly grateful. That's why over the years, we have recognized vision to learn, reading is fundamental, first book, and the National Head Start Association, and our principal partner, the United Ways. We've recognized them because almost from the outset of the campaign, we were encouraged to look outside of the school door. I have to thank the late Ron Thorpe for creating an opportunity for us as we were in the very earliest days of the campaign to attend the celebration for excellence in teaching and learning that he had started while Vice President of Education at WNET in New York. And he gave us an opportunity to speak with and to learn from the nation's most highly regarded teachers. And we met with them in large groups, in small groups, and in focus groups. And the question we put to those teachers is this: if we succeed in having more uniform and rigorous standards, standards which lead to great curriculum, powerful instruction, on-point professional development, and strong assessment tools. Will that close the gap between the children of economically challenged families and their more affluent peers? The answer to that question was a resounding no. We added a question. We said, well, suppose we add to that strong leadership that will create the culture, a culture supportive of learning, a respectful school community where adults really care for and about children. Will that close the gap? And they said no. And it took us a while, but when we returned to them the following year, we had Mayor Michael Hancock of Denver reduce their advice by telling us that we really needed to look at what was happening outside the school door. And so from almost the outset of the campaign, we have sought to support what happens in schools and what happens in classrooms and support what happens in homes, but to encourage the rest of us who were sort of spectators, encourage us to come out of the bleachers, come out of the stands, come onto the field and get in the games, because schools and educators are telling us they could not and cannot do it alone. And as we emerge from the pandemic with more children stranded on the wrong side of an even wider gap, the fact that schools cannot do this alone is increasingly apparent and urgent. And that's why over the last several years, we have looked to our partners in the informal learning space. We have looked to them and we have sought to learn with them and to learn from them. And we see them stepping up in ways that can and will, and in many instances already have made a difference for children who are not sufficiently fortunate to have the resources at home to close the gap. What we find from the nation's public libraries is that they are telling us, where have you been all this time? We have been here waiting for you. And so we've had a chance to work with and recognize the great contributions of libraries. And last year we had an opportunity to recognize the contributions of children's museums. And this year we recognize zoos and aquariums. We recognize these organizations and their respective membership associations as occupying a mission critical space, as bringing to this effort of closing the gap a set of resources and a perspective that embraces children and their parents, that seeks to create places and spaces that are accessible, affordable, and welcoming, that expand and enhance the experience of these children, and that contribute more than we ever could have expected to the successful realization of our aspiration to make learning rich environments community-wide, abundant, and ubiquitous. And it is because of their contribution that this particular session, this particular gratitude panel is really dedicated to affording us all an opportunity to say thank you to this year to the zoos and aquariums. And I must say that this Everyday Places and Spaces initiative for the campaign is run by the great leader, former leader of the Philadelphia Free Library. So she brings a passion and a personal experience into this work. And I'm grateful to her, as she is the campaign's first Albert Berger Fellow, and who leads our work in the informal learning space, who leads the campaign's initiative of Everyday Places and Spaces, and who, by her very presence, teaches us so much every day. My colleague, Siobhan Reardon. Siobhan?
Well, thank you, Ralph. That was amazing. And thank you for all you do for all of us when it comes to teaching and learning and making sure our children are well served. And good afternoon, and in some cases, good morning to everyone. I want to thank Leah, Sarah, and Sierra of the Leo team for the Campaign for Grade Level Reading for their amazing work in getting us to this point. We're excited to launch GLR Week 2025 with this gratitude session and panel discussion on the importance of unconstrained learning in informal spaces. Before we begin the program, I'd like to thank the panelists who are with us today. And please note that the full bios are linked in the chat, and but right now I'll just provide a preview of our wonderful people. We start with Monroe Richardson, who is editor at constrainedkids.com, an online publication where he writes about and shares insights from academic research on skills and skill building. Monroe is a self-avowed data geek and research nerd. He claims to read academic papers like other people read fiction. He has worked in the social sector for over 20 years. His day job is about reading and learning, and a significant portion of his work involves making high-quality academic research accessible and actionable to individuals who run programs and teach children to read. Our discussants today are Arthur Affleck III. He is the president and CEO of the Association of Children's Museums. In his role, Arthur serves as the chief executive responsible for the strategy development and execution of the organization's programs. This international nonprofit professional service organization represents and advocates for the Children's Museum field. Melissa Ballard is the Director of Programs at the Association of Science and Technology Centers, or ASTEC, where she leads the team focused on building the capacity of science centers and museums, as well as their staff, to engage in the public equitability with science. Melissa has previously held roles in advocacy, policy research, and communications at the Association of Science and Technologies, the Center for Advancement of Informal Science Education, and the After School Alliance. Ron Ferguson is an MIT-trained economist whose teaching, research, and social entrepreneurship span topics ranging from economic development to school reform to family engagement. His current priority is an initiative he launched while serving as faculty director of the Advancement Gap Initiative at Harvard University, aimed at mobilizing communities for infant, toddler, and preschool learning and brain development. It operates through the Basics, Inc., a nonprofit that he founded, and the Basics Learning Network, a community of practice with affiliated coalitions in dozens of communities in the U.S. and abroad. Ron's most recent book, co-authored with Natasha Robertson, was published in 2019. It's called The Formula: Unlocking the Secrets to Raising Highly Successful Children. As the Director of Professional Development and Education, Kari Hart oversees the Association for Zoos and Aquariums Professional Development Program, the Executive Leadership Development Program, and the Association's Education Initiatives and Partnerships. Kari has more than a decade of experience in zoo aquarium education and guest engagement at multiple accredited organizations throughout the country. Elena Rivers is the Executive Director of the Association of Library Service to Children, which is a division of the American Library Association. Elena joined ALA in 2017 as the ALSC, or the Association of Library Service to Children's Deputy Director, working with its staff, board committees, and partners to support the continued growth in member relations, communications, publications, continuing education projects, grants, and the implementation and monitoring of our strategic plan. Her work has included facilitating a division-wide collaboration on bystander intervention training and implementing the pilot for ALF Equity Fellowship and the pilot research agenda grant. So welcome to all of you, and we look forward to hearing from you. But first, before we move to the panel discussion, I'm excited to introduce and share an exceptional video we have produced featuring essential voices from the 250 zoos and aquariums across the country. This 13-minute video will showcase the valuable contributions these organizations make to our communities, supporting early school success and advancing literacy and learning in unconstrained, informal settings, where learning happens anywhere and everywhere. This film also echoes the gratitude you heard from Ralph, as well as the campaign for grade level reading and the 4 dozen organizations of the Everyday Places and Spaces Coalition who want to express their appreciation to our vital partners in our quest to ensure every child is well supported in their journey to be able to read by the end of 3rd grade. The video consists of the following participants: Dan Ash of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, he's the CEO. Jessica Shellhorn, who's the Education Manager for the Blank Park Zoo in Des Moines, Iowa. Sarah Van Warmer, Director of Education at the Buttonwood Park Zoo in New Bedford, Massachusetts. Becca Haynes, Education and Conservation Curator at the Como Park Zoo and Conservatory in St. Paul. Tom Naiman, Vice President for Education at the Maritime Aquarium in Norwalk, Connecticut. Elena Wheaton, Director of Education at the Mote Marine Laboratory and Aquarium in Sarasota, Florida. Natalie Rogers, who is the Director of Learning and Education at the Tennessee Aquarium in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And Katie Corbett, who is the Assistant Director for Education at Zoo New England, the Franklin Park and Stone Zoos in Boston, Massachusetts. A big thank you to Everyday Places and Spaces Coalition members, Duda of the Patterson Foundation, Suncoast Campaign for Grade Level Reading, Gloria Ferrara of Math Talk PBC, and Jen DeMello of Kaboom for their participation and introduction to some of these zoos and aquariums. And finally, thanks to David Yeomans and Steve White, our New York City-based video team, for their work on this compelling production, as well as to Bill Waggy Productions for their contributions to the remake learning video work from Sarasota, Florida, featured in this production. Okay, so please sit back, listen, and learn, and come back with our live discussion after the video. Enjoy the program.
Hello. I'm Dan Ash, the President and CEO of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. Zoos and aquariums provide the public with essential connections to the natural world. And for the 51 million school-aged children that visit the 251 facilities accredited by the Association of Zoos and Aquariums each year, it could be their first time experiencing the wonder and the majesty of animals up close and personal. Enticed by the fun and excitement at an aquarium or zoo, children learn about animals and the natural world almost without realizing it. In 2024, 50,000 children participated in specifically focused reading programs or let their imaginations run wild at an AZA member story time. When children experience animals at an accredited zoo or aquarium, their minds are wide open to learning about the natural world. These experiences create curiosity. Curiosity fuels learning. We learn by experiencing, engaging, and reading. And this kind of learning is happening every day at AZA accredited aquariums, zoos, and science centers. It happens for the more than 6 million school kids who took part in structured educational programs in 2024, and it happens organically for the millions and millions more who are learning informally.
Everything in the natural world is interconnected. And so I think it's a really unique place that we get to talk to our visitors and our program participants about plants and animals and how they rely on each other and how they are all interconnected and how we are all interconnected.
Anytime I'm able to kind of see or spark some type of curiosity or see that light bulb go off, is something that excites me and continues to motivate me.
We really want our visitors and the participants in our programs to come to the zoo to have fun, but to leave as conservationists.
It's incredibly exciting to do the work that we do. Our job is to translate the scientific jargon and discoveries that they're making and then to transfer that to the community. And so we're able to do that in really fun ways through interactive games, activities, science simulations.
Even if they just walk away with one bit of information that they didn't have before, I feel like we've done our job.
Our goal is to get everybody feeling like they're a part of nature, to make them inspired to have positive actions and change in the world, and to work really hard to conserve and protect the amazing things that make this biosphere so unique and incredible.
People of all ages love animals. The proximity to live animals opens people up. They drop their defenses regardless of their age in many instances, and they're excited to be in the presence of live animals.
One of the jokes we like to say is that the fun is on purpose and the learning happens by accident.
We're able to foster that curiosity and that exploration through our programs because we're informal ed. We're able to do it in a way where they're learning through play.
We have a philosophy here in education that we call feel, learn, act. And that the way to get to the learnings is not just to throw information at people, but to get them curious and excited and to build meaningful connections.
The detail that they put into those plans influences everybody who goes through. And my favorite part about it is that parents and children are learning really important things about science, and they don't even know it. They think they're just having a great time.
To make learning fun, it is incorporating opportunities for hands-on, up-close learning.
But it's really important that what people take away is that sort of magic and fun and awe that comes with having close interactions with wild animals and wild places.
We don't want it to feel like they're at school. We want them to be able to think that this is fun. This is something that they're able to be creative and be innovative. And then we also want to make sure that we are aligning that to state standards. We're sneaking those pieces in there.
What gets me up every morning is this idea that I am supporting a really passionate team of educators who are very excited to be connecting people to plants and animals.
And it doesn't have to be confined into, a classroom or worksheet, but is really out in the community in real world context.
We do a lot of learning through play in our programs. We have classes for little ones and a caregiver to come to the zoo for a program, and every single one of them has an element of free play where the children are just provided materials and they're allowed to explore those materials in whatever manner they're choosing.
We're not just focusing on science. We're finding ways to encourage children to read as well as in writing. We're looking for ways to use math in our programs.
That connection to nature through just play, I don't think there's anything quite like it.
One of the ways that we try really hard to connect our community to all this wonderful learning, especially literacy, is to make sure that we're connected with a lot of different local community partners. One of the things we offer at the Buttonwood Park Zoo is our bilingual book walk. And so bilingual book walk gives us a chance for students and kids who speak Spanish or Portuguese to come along and see a story that's represented both in English and in their native language.
In the first 5 years, we established about 30 different community partnerships.
We are always looking for opportunities to bring partners together, to work with each other. We're looking for shared projects and initiatives that large group of people can participate in. And those partnerships have truly helped to strengthen the whole educational ecosystem in our region.
One of my favorite programs is with the preschool that we co-founded in South Norwalk, in which we have 200 children in a marine-themed, STEM-oriented preschool, and every one of the families of those children, as well as the staff of the preschool, get a free family membership for the aquarium.
science is not necessarily something that is focused on in early childhood. So we are coming in to help provide those learning opportunities.
We're trying to reach audiences through the schools. We're trying to reach audiences through free family programming. And then we work with our nonprofit partners, and we work with the city, and we work with the state to try to make that happen.
For us to make sure we're meeting the needs of our community, it's important for us to make sure we have a collaborative environment with other local institutions. We partner with a lot of different institutions in our area, and that's just not attractions as well, but you also think about the partnerships that we have with our local school districts.
We're thinking about who key partners would be. The zoo was a really natural fit because the intentionality around early childhood opportunities at the zoo. Caregivers and kids are talking about animal sizes and habitats and distances and time and all of these inherently mathematical concepts that are really embedded into these real world contexts.
For education in particular, we have quite a few programs that includes participation in fifth quarter, which is a partnership we have with Boston Public Schools, where students are on site for summer school essentially at Franklin Park Zoo. So it does incorporate ELA and math as well as zoo curriculum.
Not only accessibility is important to us, but creating those equitable pathways is critical to the work that we're doing. So we provide opportunities to all in a number of different ways. When we're talking about our educational programming, we have scholarships that are available for our camp programs that we host year-round, so not just summer, fall. Anytime school is out, for the most part, we'll have camp going to help meet that need in that community. We want to make sure we make this as accessible as possible and remove any barriers that we possibly can.
Math experiences become language experiences, and I think because math and literacy are deeply interconnected, these early playful learning opportunities support both numeracy and literacy development, which I think marry the work that we're doing at Math Talk in the campaign for grade level reading really well.
We integrate the learning into the very experiential, joyful, playful elements of our programming so that it doesn't feel like learning.
Zoo smells aren't always the best, but we love our zoo sounds and our zoo sights and our zoo feels. And so adding all those multi-sensory experiences in and finding ways to connect to people where they're at. Maybe you've got kids who are absolutely obsessed with video games, but there are ways to tie in your Minecraft axolotl with the ones that you might see at a zoo. Or there are ways to connect people who love music but haven't made the connection that the foot patterns of different animal movements can line up with the same sorts of sounds you could create on a number of different instruments. So trying to find different entry points so that everyone comes to the zoo and finds their own way to connect and to be inspired and to then go on and protect these animals and plants and wild spaces in their own lives is the absolute constant mission of the Buttonwood Park Zoo and most AZA accredited zoos in the world, I'd imagine.
What are we wanting our kids to discover? How are we wanting them to connect emotionally with what we're talking about? And how do we want them to take action? You can learn so much by reading books. Get them to go outside and explore, because that's going to make them happier and healthier individuals and more connected with the world around them.
And we incorporate literacy, hands-on activities, as well as music, dance, and movement. And it's marine science focused, but really we do have a intentional incorporation of literacy.
We're told by the school system that there are parents who have asked, how do I get my kids into this program?
One of the things that we know that's very important is we have to start with our early learners. What's important about those pieces there is what we embed in there to help with literacy.
Zoos and aquariums are a place where learning really does come naturally. We are a great fit for the campaign for grade level reading and the Everyday Places and Spaces initiative, because learning really does happen everywhere at the zoo.
We use that excitement and that inspiration to power learning. We want to be a place where people can come, they can enjoy the proximity to live animals that we provide, but we can also work with educators, in many cases people who have expertise that we may not, to build literacy, to build math skills, and to build citizenship.
Thank you for acknowledging the power of these places and these experiences to inspire learning. The Association of Zoos and Aquariums is proud to be a partner in the campaign for grade level reading, and I'm proud to welcome you all to 2025 Grade Level Reading Week.
Welcome everyone to the kickoff of GLR Week. We're excited that you're here. I'm Monroe Richardson, and I will be moderating today's excellent panel of informal learning organizations. I want to start though talking with you about one of the concepts that that is framing today's discussion. In spring of 2005, a professor at the University of Michigan named Scott Paris published the first of a series of academic papers describing the differences in various reading skills. Now, Professor Paris called some skills constrained and other skills unconstrained. Over time, other researchers joined in and they added math skills along with the reading skills, and others added executive function skills as well. Constrained skills involve a relatively limited amount of information. They can be mastered in relatively limited amounts of time. These skills are readily taught and assessed, and they're mostly learned in formal classroom settings. Think about skills like the alphabet, word reading, addition, and subtraction. But unconstrained skills, however, involve much broader amounts of information. It takes much longer to master these skills. They're not as straightforward to teach and assess. These skills are learned both inside and outside of formal classroom settings. In other words, they're both taught and caught. These are skills like vocabulary, comprehension, relational thinking, perspective taking, and knowledge. Children need to develop both constrained and unconstrained skills at the same time. But the opportunities and experiences they have to develop these skills are different. My review of national data sets over the last 25 years suggests that the achievement gap is largely driven by differences in unconstrained skills. Now, early last year, I was telling a colleague in Durham, North Carolina about constrained and unconstrained skills, and she asked me if I had come up with this idea myself. Others I talk with as well, educators, practitioners, direct service providers, also were unfamiliar with this concept. So if this is new to you, you're in very good company. I realized that more people needed to know about this important insight. So I started a Substack, Unconstrained Kids, to provide more information about constrained and unconstrained skills. One key insight from developmental psychologists is that skill building is messy. Up close, it involves building, collapse, and rebuilding of skills. Children need multiple opportunities in different contexts to practice building and rebuilding skills to get to proficiency and ultimately mastery. And this is why informal learning experiences and opportunities are so important. Skills are built up gradually from real activities in real contexts. These experiences provide the opportunity for real engagement, experiences that tap into feelings and emotions, arouse curiosity, and make learning fun. High-quality research studies show that informal learning organizations can help build key unconstrained skills that quietly drive progress in reading and also math. Helping children build unconstrained skills outside of the classroom in everyday places and spaces is critical to GLR's mission of disrupting the generational cycle of poverty. It also plays a key role to ensure that children are on track by the end of kindergarten and reading at grade level by the end of third grade. I want to bring our panel on, and I want to start with having each of our panelists briefly reintroduce themselves and their organization. So if I can ask all the panelists to turn your videos on and then get ready to come off mute. I'm going to call you one by one. And so if you could just reintroduce yourselves and your organizations. And we're going to start with Arthur.
Thank you, Monroe. I'm Arthur Affleck, President and CEO of the Association of Children's Museums. Thrilled to be here, thrilled to support over 300 children's museums all over the country in all 50 states, working to support children and families to help them to enrich their lives. And I'll stop there.
Thank you. Melissa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Ballard. I'm the Director of Programs at the Association of Science and Technology Centers. We're a professional membership association with about 415 members in the US, who collectively have about 60 million visits per year. And probably you've heard of some of the big science centers like the American Museum of Natural History or Space Center Houston, but a lot of our members are sort of medium sized or smaller, maybe 10 full-time staff members. So a lot of diversity out there. And I think the through line is certainly lots of willing partners around education, around wellness of children and families.
Thank you. Ronald.
Hi, I'm Ron Ferguson. I'm the founder and executive director of the Basics, Inc. We are a whole community approach to birth to five parenting. We're in about 60 communities around the United States and also in Australia, Brazil, Bermuda, and Canada. I'm also the author of the formula, Unlocking the Secrets to Raising Highly Successful Children. I'm obviously not from a zoo or an aquarium. I'm here today just to talk about how what zoos and aquariums do fit with some of the science and some of what we know about what master parenting comprises.
All right. Thank you, Ron. Carrie.
Hi there, I'm Carrie Hart. I'm the Director of Professional Development and Education for the Association of Zoos and Aquariums, doing my best to represent our 251 accredited organizations, and lucky enough that many of those organizations share membership with the Association of Children's Museums and the Association of Science and Technology Centers.
All right. Thank you. And Alina.
Hi, everyone. I'm Alina Rivers, and I am the Executive Director for the Association for Library Service to Children. We are a division of the American Library Association, and we support just over 3,000 members who are primarily library practitioners serving youth 0 to 14 years of age, and happy to be here as part of an opportunity to share what we do and how we do that alongside other organizations.
Thank you. So I'm going to start with the first question. When people think about early literacy, they often think about the visible aspects of reading, like word reading skills. But the unconstrained skills I just talked about are just as important, and they tend to be less visible. So I'd like our panelists to think about ways in which children's museums, zoos, aquariums, science and technology centers, and libraries can help children develop these less visible skills. Skills like inference and reasoning, vocabulary, perspective taking, listening comprehension that are also critical for success by the end of kindergarten and also third grade. So Alina, I'd like to start with you. How do you think about this question?
Thanks, Monroe. I think it is interesting, and particularly from a library perspective, what we offer and how the work we've done in libraries has evolved. We think a lot about story times as part of this experience, and where this work can connect young children to actual physical things outside of the book. But, the story times have pretty much evolved from sitting in a circle and listening to a story to being something where we really focus on bringing a story alive, bringing a book alive. And by doing that, we make these story times more interactive and building into the story time, the opportunity to connect with the concepts and things that are in the book, to hold a particular object that might be reflected in the story, to have the storyteller generate questions and ask for responses, to elaborate on vocabulary words that are in the story. So you're not just getting that knowledge as that experience is something that's just straight and direct from the book, but providing some extension opportunities that really help engage our, especially our earlier learners, in what is this doing for us? How are we experiencing it? What does it mean to do something like sit in a car and drive through traffic, where you can then take that moment and have, after the story, parents who've gathered or their caregivers with the children and actually like mapping out with tape what a road would look like on the floor, and holding cars and driving that along, and talking about what it means to have a stop sign if you have to walk through something, or connecting on learning about a word that might be like intersection, something big that you think about. So we treat this as something where learning begins from birth. And one of the big concepts I like to mention around this is the Every Child Ready to Read, which is an initiative we support with the Public Library Association of the American Library Association. And it really builds on these concepts of singing, talking, reading, writing, and playing, and making sure that those things are integrated into the story times, and that the caregivers who are usually with the children who are part of that have an opportunity to learn what it means to work with your child from infant through all ages. To incorporate things like singing and talking and reading and writing along with a story time. So we really see it as a way to build on and expand, make it interactive, and giving exposure to things that are beyond the book.
I love that idea of making those connections beyond the book. I was thinking about my daughter who just turned 20, and when she was 5, we got a friend gave us this book on about Alaska, and she became enamored with beluga whales. And we happened to got a chance to take her to the aquarium in Vancouver. And she was over the moon in that she finally got to see a beluga whale. And there's nothing like, actually seeing one in real life. Um, Carrie, I was thinking about the role of zoos and aquariums, and thinking about the importance of comprehension, which is what all of these tests are all about. And of course, that's the purpose of reading. And we know from sort of the current state-of-the-art research about reading comprehension, how incredibly important world knowledge is. And so I wonder if you talk about sort of the roles of zoos and aquariums to help children begin to learn about the world around them, and play an important role in their early literacy development.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I think that we like to think of zoos and aquariums as spaces of experiential learning, right? So there are all different ways of learning, and all of them are important, and all of them build together. But this opportunity to connect with the world around us in that hands-on, in-person way can just be so impactful and so powerful. And one of the other beautiful things that we get to see in aquariums and zoos is that intergenerational learning that you also see in museums and libraries. It's these spaces where children are coming with their parents and their grandparents and their aunts and their uncles and family friends and neighbors and all of these other people that are building that experience for them, that are building what they're learning, and that are helping them build their worldview and their perspective on community and on the value of reading and the value of learning and what role that plays in their whole life. And that's such a foundational piece that can extend well into adulthood. And we see that shape the way that we are. And I think that, zoos and literacy and aquariums and literacy have this really interesting synergy where sometimes somebody read a book that prompted them to come and learn in person a little bit more about an animal that they've read about, or an ecosystem that they got curious about. Or sometimes that experience at the aquarium or the zoo can be what prompts somebody to go to their library afterwards and say, I want to learn more about that animal. That was strange. I'd never seen it before. Or I just felt really connected to this particular species and I want to know more. And so I think that all of these pieces just are so interconnected, and those moments of wonder and those moments of relationship that we build in our community spaces are so powerful and really help with that comprehension, that understanding of the world as a big space that we all play a part in, and that opportunity to spark interest and spark wonder for learning more.
Melissa, I can only imagine that, and thinking about my kids, when they were little, we were in Kansas City and loved taking them to Science City at Union Station. And they love, sort of learning about science and the world. And my youngest daughter I just talked about is an environmental science major now. So I'm curious about, from the perspective of science and technology centers, sort of what you see about the opportunity for children to begin to learn about the world through these visits with their parents.
It's kind of similar to zoos and aquariums and children's museums too, right? We also think about just the design of those physical spaces to inspire wonder and awe, and to sort of signal early on when you walk in the door, this is about play and certainly socializing and playing together with the adults who came with you, but also with other kids, which might be in more of an educational program or a facilitated program. But a lot of the sort of the foundations of early childhood learning and literacy are kind of the same too, right? We pay attention to social emotional learning, we pay attention to that skill development, both in the design of education programs and exhibits. But there's also, right, those other affordances that museums and zoos and all have, right? So for zoos and aquarium, there's their live collections, their animals, their plants, and for other types, right, we have our hands-on exhibits where you can see and experience physical phenomena and think about it and question it. So we really like to bring to bear all of those additional learning and interactive resources that can really enhance learning about certain topics.
I love that you talked about wonder and awe. And one of the things that we know from the research on skills and skill building is the importance of emotion. We know that emotion is the fuel for learning, and that our emotions have to be turned on first for our minds to be turned on so that we're ready to engage and learn. And social emotions like awe and wonder in particular, which are triggered externally, can be incredibly powerful. Are there, I'm curious from your perspective of children's museums, if you could talk about the emotional aspect of sort of the design of educational experiences when children come into children museums and other informal learning opportunities.
Sure. So one of the things that we talk about in the children's museum space, again, and it is echoed in what you heard from my colleagues, is that we try to create an environment where young people, children, can discover new things, and in that discovery can become excited. We do our work through learning through play is what we emphasize, but we use guided play where there's a learning objective, but the child has agency. So the child gets to decide where he or she wants to engage, and then again, hence become excited. And then in terms of the social and emotional development, in a very intentional way, we help children think about collaborating and playing together nicely in the sandbox, if you will. Even in our climbing structures, we absolutely create situations where kids have to collaborate to get around and get up and get down. And obviously there are museum educators and others around to intervene when necessary, but they get to practice engaging with each other. They get to practice self-management. They get to practice sharing. You can't have all of the things. And I just want to take a moment, a personal moment to thank my colleagues. I have a grandson, my first grandson, who's just almost 2 years old, and I took him to the National Children's Museum on Saturday. But he has been to zoos, he's been to aquariums, he has been to, many children's museums, and I think we're going to get this Guinness record at some point because of what I do. But in addition to the academic explanation, seeing him engaging with other children, seeing him building things and the young lady comes over and says, oh, how about this? And him engaging, seeing him, running with this little turtle thing that he just loved and the other kid wanted to play with it too. And just, okay, you can hold it for just that experience of seeing and modeling and seeing these attributes modeled is so helpful for kids. But the last thing I'll say about the emotional piece is, Dr. Angelo said once that people may not remember long what you say or what you do, but they remember how you made them feel. Children leave the Children's Museum often crying because they don't want to leave, because that they feel so good in that space that they want to be there. And as someone suggested, they're having a good time. We emphasize joy and play, and the learning is almost something that they don't know is happening, but it's happening there. And I think that emotion of having a good time while learning and developing these skills is something that we try to generate. And the last thing I'll say is that I think these skills are best developed when we get young people to experience all of these spaces multiple times. Many zoo visits, many aquariums, libraries. I mean, you can't live without libraries. So all of these experiences, I think, create the environment where kids can develop these unconstrained skills in the best positive way. So thank you, my colleagues, for all you do for me and my grandson and a million other children all around the country and the world.
Thank you, Arthur. And I just want to underscore a couple of things you said. It's practice for playing together, collaboration, engaging, sharing, self-management. We need all of these skills as adults. And so it just sort of underscores the importance of children's museums. Ron, I have to pull you in. I am dying to hear your perspective, thinking about this from the perspective of families that you work with and support. We heard Arthur talk about multiple generations. Would love to hear what your thoughts are about what you've heard so far. And I know you've got a particular thought as well about the importance of emotions in children's experiences.
Right. I'm often preoccupied with trying to give parents a mental map or a story to tell or a way to hold on to these insights. Okay. We talk about lots of things, but if parents are going to remember just one thing, what should it be? Right? And one thing I extract from the last 3 minutes is exciting experiences. Okay. You want to find ways to give your kid exciting experiences. The word experiences also comes through and through. The word opportunity often goes with it, but we're trying to give our kids experiences, and the more exciting they are, the more whatever they're learning imprints on their brain. Okay, we all have those moments that we remember for a lifetime. Okay, my grandmother took me to see Duke Ellington when I was 12 years old. I was already playing clarinet. I still know what it looked like sitting in that audience from the stage, right? And I can mention a number of other things across. So we all have those. And I founded the Basics 10 years ago, so when we really kicked off, because I was shocked by how large the skill gaps were by the time kids are 2 years old. And they really are big in the national data by the time kids are 2 years old. So we tried to design something that could go to scale and could give parents mnemonics, a combination of information, encouragement, and reminders to do what we call all 5 basics every day, every child. Okay. And each of the basic principles is a phrase. You hear people talk often about talking and playing and reading, but we try to capture more than that in each of these phrases. And Monroe just asked me about the emotional piece. The first principle is maximize love, manage stress. One of the most fascinating things there is a kid's sense of emotional security is a foundation for the development of executive function skills. So their self-regulation depends upon how much they felt loved as a little kid. Okay, and you can imagine people walking through any of these organizations that we're talking about now and the affective dynamic between the parent and the kid as they're walking through, and even reminding kids, let your kid know you love them every, so often. But then talk, sing, and point, count, group, and compare, explore through movement and play, read and discuss stories. So not just read, but interact with the story. Realizing that play is about exploration, it's discovery time. Don't just count, but also look at patterns and compare. Okay, don't just talk, but also sing and point and interact. And so if parents could commit all 5 of these things to memory and have them in mind as they're walking through the aquarium or the library or the zoo, then they've got a theory of change. And so the question is, can we give parents a mental map, a theory of change about how and why to create exciting experiences for their kids? And I'll stop with that, but I also actually recommend our book, The Formula: Unlocking the Secrets to Raising Highly Successful Children, because there we studied a couple hundred super successful people and drew the pattern out. And recall the role: the early learning partner, the flight engineer, the fixer, the revealer, the philosopher, the model, the negotiator, and the GPS navigational voice. And each of those roles captures the kinds of things that parents do with their kids to give them exciting experiences and so on and so forth over time. So again, bottom line, what I'm saying is that the more we can give parents ways to hold on to these ideas in a framework, a mental map, the more they have a theory of change for what they're doing with their kid, and the more likely they can sustain that and use all these institutions as they play out those theories.
Thanks, Ron. So one of the interesting things that I think is also come through, and I love this idea of exciting experiences. It's how do kids have exciting experiences across a number of different places. And in Philadelphia, there's this interesting initiative that has really encouraged informal learning organizations like zoos, aquariums, museums to work together with community-based organizations to create access engagement to have these kinds of exciting experiences that you're talking about, Ron. I'm curious about how different organizations go about sort of collaborating together with other organizations to create these opportunities. And Alina, I'm curious if you talk first about from the perspective of libraries and how do libraries like sort of work together with other organizations to sort of create these opportunities for kids?
Yeah, and honestly, the biggest thing that I feel like libraries do is try to build community partnerships and really connect with the community, because what we deliver in a library is ideally largely the result of what the community needs. So just having a connection not only with your individual members, but the organizations that support those members are really an entry point for libraries to make those connections. We see a lot of opportunities and work with healthcare organizations, childcare organizations, the groups that we have here in this panel. We've worked with the Association of Children's Museums in developing what is called a grant work around welcoming spaces, and just taking advantage of what the museums do to create visually appealing places and spaces that can kind of contribute and build into what we do and provide in a library. So there are a lot of opportunities that we utilize for that, but one thing we also try to think about is what does that access look like? And it's not always easy to connect with these groups. So one thing we like to think about is how do you not only take that work outside of what you do in a library, but bring it in? And that really helps to build those connecting points where you can say, I may be serving as a library staff member in a particular organization, like a child care center that might actually have the librarian visit. Or if it's a science related piece, we might work with a local university to bring in objects that we can keep in the space as we talk about a particular theme, so that we have these connecting points where we recognize that the partnership might mean something along the lines of how do we create that access and entry point for our patrons and our visitors and the community that we serve, and knowing that it doesn't always happen just solely in the library and in these moments we think of as traditional library moments. There are certainly more versions of that that can be connected to and visited and applied in this setting.
Thanks, Selena. Arthur?
Yeah, just very quickly, in addition to working with the wonderful library partners, other museums and schools, there's one partnership that many of our children's museums have been building recently that's exciting to me, and that's with jails and working with incarcerated parents who are not able to see their children. And we've worked on arrangements where they can bring those children to the Children's Museum and bring those parents to the Children's Museum, take off any of the garb from the jail or what have you, and they can be with their children in a fun, engaging place. And that's relatively new. It's been happening in the last 2-3 years, and it's a growing kind of phenomenon. And so we can be unique in our partnerships that can have some real lasting and meaningful impacts on children and families. So I just wanted to mention that in addition to the great work that we've done with libraries, and you'll hear more about what we do with ASCC and some other of our museum partners.
Thank you. That sounds like that's a really important partnership and collaboration you're discussing. I'd like to sort of focus for a moment about really sort of advocating for the important work that all of you all do. And this work takes support, right? Financial support to make this work, support from government, support from the private sectors. And would love to hear a little bit about how museums and libraries and zoos and aquariums and museums sort of work together on advocacy efforts to secure the support that's needed so you can provide these opportunities, these exciting experiences for children and families. And so, Melissa, I'd like to invite you to sort of talk a little bit about that for our audience today.
Yeah, glad to kick it off for everyone. I think at the national level, really spurred by the COVID pandemic, a lot of the national museum associations started working together a lot more closely, where we all face the same challenge of having to close our doors to the public and letting go of lots of our staff, and thinking about how do we get back on our feet. So, with ACM, with AZA, we continue to work on the federal funding landscape, which is rapidly shifting. We've worked with ALA, of course, on thinking about the Institute of Museum and Library Services. And right, there's a number of federal agencies and federal funding streams that might be science specific, but right, we also pay attention to the National Endowment for Humanities and Arts. All of these federal funders where support for research on learning, for ways to experiment with engaging families and engaging certain underrepresented populations. Our field has really relied heavily on a lot of those. So in addition to continuing to advocate at the federal level, working together, we also are trying to think more about how can we activate our members, our museums at the state, local, and regional level. And so that's really a place for, I think there's a lot of potential for growth. I saw someone in the chat earlier had mentioned IC in Utah, which is one of the very few, maybe the last sort of standing state level advocacy orgs for informal STEM learning. But there are certainly some models that other states could build on. But I think one of the places where ASTC would like to really push our members is for our members to better understand the local advocacy landscape. So certainly they should advocate for their institutions, but how all of those community partners that they work with on outreach programming, on education programming, what are the other things that they care about, like literacy, like after school programs in the 21st Century Community Learning Centers grant, nutrition and school meals and things like that. And I think there's some work that we would like to do to shift some of those mindsets and help set up those partnerships, but it's happening so sporadically. It's just not the level that is required at this moment. Hand it off to another of my colleagues to say more.
Yeah, does anyone else want to weigh in on this important advocacy question?
I'll say a word about it. I think it's important for policymakers and funders to have a sense of what the ecology is that we're trying to create in communities in support of families. And so we can try to start to develop more maps of those ecologies so we can point out where the gap is or what types of exciting experiences are missing from the community because certain things are not there. Also, when we're trying to work together, I found it's important when we're trying to get another organization to do stuff. Our stuff works only through community-based organizations, and we have to figure out how does what we're asking them to do fit within their workflow, right? And so if we can understand the workflows of our partners, we can suggest partnerships that actually jibe with what they're trying to do, both within their workflow and within their mission. And so they've got to tell a story about why should our organization do this and where do we fit it in. And so we've got these two, the image of the ecology, and then how each of the things that need to get done gets integrated into that ecology. And the more we can work out that story, that picture, the more we can share it with policymakers and other funders, and it's like a big puzzle, right? You're trying to complete the puzzle, and the better understanding we have of what that puzzle looks like, the more we can collaborate collectively, intentionally on making sure the puzzle is all put together.
Thanks, Ron. I think really resonating with your call for sort of mapping out the ecology, and obviously the way that children and families interact with informal learning organizations is very local, and so that's going to vary across place to place. So
the way the kids interact with the organizations and the way the organizations interact with each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we would like to, I want to thank all of you for really great conversation, but certainly want to bring in our audience into the conversation. And so I want to remind everyone, if you've got questions, and we've got a Q&A box, and to please put your questions there so that we can see them and respond to them. I noticed one question that somebody put in the main chat, though, that I want to pull out. And let's see, I just lost it. Okay. Elena Foster asked, she'd be interested in hearing about how the library approaches low literacy among adults in the effort to maximize exciting experiences for children through exposure to ideas and family engagement.
I think I could take that one. Thank you. One of the big things that libraries really want to and do participate in is family literacy. And that means that at all levels, 0 through the age in which, we all are and beyond, we want to feel like we understand what our options are and that reading is a basic right. And it's something we should all be participating in. So at this association level, we do build out programming that is directed toward adults so that they feel comfortable and confident in their learning and their access to education and opportunities to learn to read and to participate in that experience with their children. So more specifically, what we think about when we're as a part of a children's association is how do we engage the parents in this work? And that can be done as an opportunity that sits alongside what they do with their child or infant. So just knowing that parents and their caregivers may not even be in a position to do some of the work that they know their children need, recognizing that and giving them the space to be a part of library services that help build on that. There may be separate workshops that we host or trainings or offering of resources outside of the library and partnering with other organizations that do that work so that we are making a connecting point for adults to understand that we're not here just to service the children, but you as an adult and a family member who's engaged in building out that learning opportunity for your children.
Can I just add one thing there? It's really, before a child can read, he doesn't know if the parent can read or is reading. And so the parents who are reluctant to read because they can't read well, just say, open the book and tell a story. Look at the pictures, speak with expression, point to the bright colors, hug, cuddle up. And so that kind of experience, before a kid can read, which for a lot of folks may not be till after they're 5 years old. You can have this pretty much the same experience you would have had if you had been reading. And I think I found that parents are often comforted by that if they feel like they're not good readers themselves.
Thanks for sharing that, Ron. And certainly we know that comprehension skills start with the ear. And so it's having those conversations with kids that allow them to build those early skills, vocabulary, inference, reasoning. Those come from dialogue as much as it comes from, reading a picture book. So absolutely important. There is, Shelley Dorfman has a question about performing arts organizations in addition to the organizations we have represented here, and curious about their role in helping build children's skills. First off, Shelley, I would love to learn more about the results you talk about in the chat with those 2,000 children. I can tell you, I know from research studies that there's certainly some very compelling evidence around performing arts and performances and what it can do for children. There's a professor who actually compared children attending a live theater production versus watching the same content in a movie, and actually found, compared to watching it in a movie, children increase their vocabulary as well as their concept knowledge from the live performance. So we know both observing a live performance, but also participating in it helps to build skills that are important for children's reading skills. So definitely performing arts organizations are important as well. Let's see what else we have here in the Q&A. Okay. So Aaron Fulton has a question. So is there a program that focuses on accessibility for sort of disaster-stricken communities where being physically there in person may not be a possibility, but perhaps could either be virtual or bring programming to those communities? So looking for any sort of other ways of providing access to some of these experiences and opportunities that may be virtual or maybe mobile, coming to communities rather than present in the communities, particularly those that have experienced disasters.
I can jump in quickly. Many children's museums actually serve, like, all the counties in their states. They have mobile programming and they move around the state quite regularly, especially when there are disasters. Certainly when it's safe to do so, try to move into those areas. And all of our museums have some form of virtual programming that can be made available when physically engaging is not possible.
And I did too. I think, similarly across ACM and AC, we share a lot of members, but when there are local disasters, they do get out on the ground. They call their school and teacher partners, like, what do you need? How can we show up? I know Science Mill was just out there helping some of the victims in the Texas flooding over the past several weeks. So they really do try to be responsive and customize their outreach in ways that is helpful, but not overwhelming to their partners and their communities on the ground.
And I think I could add for probably for all of us as we experience all these situations where we have to rethink how we work. I've been quite amazed at the creative nature of relocating and finding new spaces and ways to address the needs and deliver services in a non-conventional or traditional manner. Stepping outside of the space and actually using a open parking lot to build out a place to deliver materials, and thinking about how to connect virtually through other organizations that may still be intact. So a lot of creativity really is born of these moments where we think we can't stop what we're doing, we have to keep going, and we do, and we all find out those ways and those opportunities, which oftentimes builds into something that can become a more permanent part of what we do because we realized, wow, that worked, and that's something we can make accessible um, uh, on a continuous basis.
So we have a question from Lynette White Pierce, and she asked the panel how library systems, public or school-based, can partner more intentionally with school districts to provide supports for students with disabilities, particularly those in middle and high school who experience cognitive and executive function challenges. I know with GLR, our focus is birth through third grade. So some of you might have some thoughts about students in middle and high school, and particularly interested in how those partnerships can help close learning and access gaps beyond elementary years. And I know Lynette's question is about libraries, but there might be others of you that also can speak into this as well.
Thank you for the question, Lynette. I think for the most part, it's libraries in general need to be thinking about where their audience is and what are the issues and the challenges that their groups are experiencing. There are absolutely organizations in the field that are working in this area, and encouraging a library to make that connection is certainly something that should be explored if it's not in the community that's already existing. And being able to partner more intentionally with the school districts, I think generally that is both the goal and the challenge of what libraries and schools do, is that we really want to bridge the work that is happening in schools and ensuring that these library spaces are provide a continuous opportunity for kids who are being uh, who are working within the school system on something, but being able to come outside of it and come to their library and know that there's a space and a place for this, that we're pushing out materials and resources and building access to that. So just really finding the sense that this is a bridging opportunity and something we need to think through and participate in.
Thank you. Excellent. One of the questions that we got was about rural areas, and rural areas generally lack museums, libraries, science centers, and curious whether any of the panelists do traveling shows in rural areas or other ways to provide access to children and families in rural areas.
Yeah, I would say not across the board and not everywhere. I mean, just to be honest from the start, but there are opportunities with zoos and aquariums that they travel and do outreach, with many museums that will travel and do outreach programs in rural communities and in communities that have less access to cultural institutions. So I think that starting with whatever is nearest to you is probably a good starting place. There are also a lot of virtual opportunities, which I know is not always accessible in some areas either. Sometimes internet access can be another big challenge for people. But if internet access is possible, there are some really cool live programs where children and families can interact with real educators that are bringing real artifacts or animals or whatever the case may be into the virtual space, which maybe is not quite the same experience as being there in person or getting to touch something or getting right up close, but hopefully to help bridge some of those gaps.
Can I weigh a little bit? I'm not sure what I think about what I'm about to say, but if you live in a rural area, don't be shy about organizing something. Okay, reaching into your own community to people who have certain kinds of pets or who have something that would be interesting to package with other things that are interesting, and then move around the community and share those things. So it's going to be a lot better than not having anything. And sometimes people hold back because nobody gave them permission to do things. I suggest take the permission, step up, do your own little, whatever scale it might take in the community until you can find people from other places that have more resources to come in and do those things.
So we're closing in on the end of our time together. I want to ask our panelists for a final takeaway that you want our audience today to think about regarding informal learning and the what informal learning can do to help build children's reading development. And so, Carrie, I want to start with you. We're lifting up zoos and aquariums. What's the takeaway you want our audience to have today?
I think the most important thing has, all of us have said it in different ways, but this opportunity is to build a web of connections and just a group of community that you can build around. There are so many great opportunities and so many different ways to connect. And so please seek those out in your community. If you see opportunities for those, please reach out to your zoos, aquariums, museums, whoever, your libraries, and start having those conversations. I think there's just a lot of power in all of us caring about the same thing and wanting the same successful opportunities for the children in our communities and for the adults in our communities too.
Thank you. Melissa.
Yeah, in the kind of same vein too, I think, sometimes it can seem intimidating to approach a museum or a large zoo, but a lot of the folks who work there are they share your professional background. There's a lot of former teachers, there's people who probably went to the same early childhood prep program that you did, and we all ultimately care about children and families' well-being. So I think also, not only thinking about sort of the programmatic partnerships, but the sort of partnerships and collaborations with those other education professionals in those institutions.
Thank you. Alina, what do you think?
I absolutely agree. And I think I would add that, we're all in a position of opening the eyes of those that we work with and helping people realize the possibilities and what is, as we say, beyond the book or beyond the work that we do. So just recognizing that, we can take that active role, even if it's something small we're delivering to someone, it is big in their mind. And just knowing that we have that role and that potential to be a part of that that novelty that kids get out of seeing something and participating in something they haven't done before. It all matters.
It all matters. That's absolutely right. Ron, bring us home. Oh, you're on mute, Ron. We're missing it.
As I think about wrapping it up, I'm thinking about the ecology, that all these different organizations are part of the same ecology. And the more we can draw the cross-cutting themes, where each center is promoting certain themes and the parents know what those themes are, and the themes have to do with this notion of exciting experiences, but also meaning-making opportunities. Just think about each encounter the child has, and even the parent has with a particular setting. What are the things available to be thought about? the meanings to be made, and how can we trigger those? How can we have prompts so that parents can pose a particular question or ask a kid to do something that would leave a mark in terms of a moment of understanding, and having those things accumulate. The more effectively we can be coherent ecologies, the more parents can have a theory of change for what they're doing with their kids, so they're being strategic. The more systemic and sustainable can become childhood in the communities that we care about.
Love it. For our audience, I'd love if you have a takeaway, whether it's an idea, a phrase, a thought, please share it in the chat. I'm gonna leave with mine. I love the idea of creating exciting, meaning-making experiences. And I'm going to combine it with one other thing that Ron said: don't wait for permission. As our panelists have said, all of these professionals that work in these organizations are here because of children. They have backgrounds in serving children in education. and that informal learning matters every much as bit as the time that children spend in formal learning institutions. And we can't wait for permission to create these exciting meaning-making experiences. So I want to thank all our panelists. I want to thank GLR for this opportunity to have this really important conversation this morning or this afternoon, and want to thank all of you that are here with us as well.
And I want to thank all of you. You've all been fabulous. This is a remarkable conversation that I think brought home a lot of the importance as to why it is we have these remarkable institutions that serve children on such a vital level. And thank you to Ron for all of his insights and the impact of the basics and the work you do. And of course, Monroe, you were a fabulous moderator. I think we all learn a lot from you always. Then I just also want to close out. We have 1 minute left. That we have a number of GLR Week sessions still to go. We have one following this at 3 o'clock on the guardrails and guidelines of tech for well-being and literacy development. That's an incredible panel of lots of people. We have 2 tomorrow, one at 12:30 on starting early to boost success, and another at 3 o'clock on building the workforce for tutoring. We have 2 more on Wednesday, reducing chronic absence, and at 3 o'clock, disproportionate impact of rural America's children, speaking of rural America, and families as collateral damage. And then finally, we close out at 12:30 with a webinar on from struggling to stability, elevating the prospects of ALS families. And then finally at 3 o'clock, parents as curators of their children's education. Indeed. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to the panel, and thank you to my colleagues at the Campaign for Grade Level Reading for their fabulous work in getting us kicking off Grade Level Reading Week. Thanks to all.